My name is Beverly, and I'm 32 years old. I work as a marketing coordinator here in Denver, and I thought I had my life figured out. 3 months ago, I was sitting at my childhood dining room table, the same one where I'd eaten countless family dinners, sharing what I believed would be the happiest news of my life. I was engaged to Marcus, the most wonderful man I'd ever met, and I couldn't wait to tell my family. The ring on my finger sparkled under the chandelier light, and my heart was full of hope and excitement. But as I looked around that table at the faces of the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, I realized that sometimes the people who should celebrate your joy the most are the ones who will try to destroy it instead. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Please hit that like button if you've ever felt like your family's love came with conditions. And don't forget to subscribe because this family dinner was about to become the night that changed everything forever. Growing up in the Henderson household meant living by one unbreakable rule: mother always knew best. Dolores Henderson ran our family like a military operation, and questioning her authority was not an option. From the time I could walk, every aspect of my life was carefully orchestrated according to her vision of perfection. My report cards had to show straight A's, not because she cared about my education, but because anything less reflected poorly on her parenting. She chose my extracurricular activities, my friends, even my college major. Business administration, she declared, was practical and respectable. My secret dream of studying art was dismissed as foolish nonsense before I could even voice it properly. My father, Ernest, was a gentleman who learned early in their marriage that keeping the peace meant staying silent. He would give me sympathetic looks when Mother launched into her lectures about proper behavior and life choices, but he never intervened. His strategy was to make himself invisible during conflicts, disappearing into his workshop or suddenly remembering urgent errands that needed running. My older brother Kenneth was the golden child who could do no wrong. When he brought home mediocre grades, Mother praised his effort. When he got arrested for underage drinking, she blamed his friends for being bad influences. Kenneth learned to work this system perfectly, playing the charming son while watching me struggle under the weight of impossible expectations. The pattern became clear early. Love in our house was conditional, and the conditions were set entirely by Mother. She controlled through guilt, manipulation, and the constant threat of disappointment. Her favorite weapon was the silent treatment, where she would ignore me for days after any perceived transgression, making me desperate to earn back her approval. My romantic relationships became casualties of this toxic dynamic. In high school, when I dated Tommy Roberts, Mother found reasons to criticize everything about him. His family wasn't successful enough, his clothes weren't nice enough, his manners weren't refined enough. She made every interaction so uncomfortable that he eventually stopped coming around. In college, I dated Michael Stevens for almost a year before bringing him home. Mother was polite to his face, but spent weeks afterward picking apart every conversation, every gesture, every imperfection. She convinced me that he was probably seeing other girls, that I was just convenient for him, that I deserved better. The seeds of doubt she planted grew until I ended a perfectly good relationship. By the time I graduated and started my career, I had learned to keep my romantic life completely separate from my family. It was easier to date in secret than to subject someone I cared about to Mother's scrutiny and inevitable disapproval. I told myself this was temporary, that eventually I would meet someone so wonderful that even she couldn't find fault with him. That someone turned out to be Marcus Chen, and meeting him felt like finding sunlight after years in shadows. We worked for the same marketing firm but in different departments, and our friendship developed slowly over shared coffee breaks and casual conversations about campaigns and client challenges. Marcus was everything I had never dared to hope for in a partner. He was kind without being weak, confident without being arrogant, and he possessed a gentle sense of humor that could make me laugh even on my worst days. As a software engineer who had transitioned into marketing technology, he was brilliant in a quiet, unassuming way that I found incredibly attractive. What drew me to him most was how he treated people. He remembered the security guard's name and asked about his grandchildren. He never lost patience with difficult clients, finding creative solutions instead of pointing fingers. When the office coffee machine broke, he brought in his own espresso maker and shared with everyone without making a big deal about it. We dated secretly for 6 months, meeting for dinners in restaurants across town, taking weekend trips to nearby cities, building a relationship in careful privacy. Marcus understood my need for discretion, without making me feel ashamed about it. He knew my family situation was complicated, and never pressured me for details I wasn't ready to share. When I finally told him about Mother's controlling behavior, and my fears about introducing him, he listened without judgment. He didn't try to minimize my concerns, or rush me into anything. Instead, he simply said he would wait until I felt ready, and that whenever that time came, he would do whatever he could to make a good impression. The first meeting happened at a neutral restaurant downtown. I chose the location carefully, somewhere public but not too casual, upscale but not pretentious. Marcus wore his best suit and brought flowers for Mother, which she accepted with polite coolness that I recognized as a bad sign. Throughout dinner, she asked probing questions disguised as polite interest. What did his parents do for work? Where had he gone to school? What were his long-term career prospects? Marcus answered everything honestly and respectfully, but I could see Mother's mental checklist being marked with invisible red ink. The drive home was silent, except for Mother's occasional sighs and thoughtful hums. When I called her the next day, hoping for positive feedback, she delivered her verdict with surgical precision. Marcus seemed nice enough, but did I really think he was ambitious enough for me? Was I sure he could provide the kind of stability I deserved? Shouldn't I be dating someone with more established career prospects? Her concerns planted familiar seeds of doubt. But this time, something was different. This time, I was in love. 8 months later, Marcus proposed during a quiet evening at home. We had cooked dinner together, something simple and perfect, and as we sat on his couch watching the sunset through his apartment window, he suddenly got down on one knee with a ring he had been saving for months to buy. The proposal was everything I had ever dreamed of. Intimate, sincere, and completely focused on us rather than grand gestures or public displays. The ring was a classic solitaire diamond, simple and elegant, exactly what I would have chosen for myself. When I said yes through happy tears, I felt like my real life was finally beginning. Planning the family announcement became my next challenge. I spent days strategizing the perfect approach, deciding that a family dinner would provide the right setting. I wanted to share this joy with the people who had raised me, hoping that seeing my happiness would help them accept Marcus into our family. I volunteered to cook Mother's favorite meal, homemade lasagna with her secret recipe that she had taught me years ago, garlic bread made from scratch, and Caesar salad with anchovies exactly the way she liked it. I bought her favorite flowers, white roses mixed with baby's breath, and arranged them in the crystal vase she had given me for Christmas. The dinner was scheduled for Sunday at 2 o'clock, a time when everyone would be relaxed and unhurried. Kenneth and his wife Janet agreed to come with their 2 young children, making it a complete family gathering. I imagined their excited congratulations, Mother finally warming up to Marcus, and Father shaking his hand with genuine approval. Marcus was nervous but optimistic as we drove to my childhood home. He had chosen his outfit carefully, dress pants, a button-down shirt, and a sweater that made him look both professional and approachable. He carried a bottle of wine for dinner and small gifts for Kenneth's children, wanting to make the best possible impression. The afternoon started pleasantly enough. Mother complimented the lasagna. Father asked Marcus about his work with genuine interest, and Kenneth's children played happily in the living room while the adults talked around the dining table. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe that everything might go smoothly. I waited until after dessert, when everyone seemed relaxed and satisfied, to make my announcement. Standing up slightly in my chair, I cleared my throat and said, "Marcus and I have some wonderful news to share with all of you." The silence that followed felt endless. I showed them the ring, explaining how Marcus had proposed, how happy we were, how excited we felt about building a life together. I watched Mother's face change from polite interest to something cold and hard that I had never seen before. "When is the wedding?" she asked in a tone that could have frozen water. "We haven't set a date yet," I replied, suddenly feeling defensive. "We wanted to share the news with family first and then start planning together." Mother set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision. "I see. And you've thought this through completely? You're absolutely certain this is what you want?" The questions felt like traps, but I answered honestly. Yes, I was certain. Yes, I had thought it through. Yes, I loved Marcus and wanted to spend my life with him. What happened next changed everything between us forever. Mother's reaction was swift and devastating. She looked directly at Marcus and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't think you're right for my daughter. Beverly deserves someone with more ambition, more established prospects, someone who can provide better security for her future." The words hit the table like physical blows. Marcus's face remained composed, but I saw the hurt flash across his eyes before he carefully controlled his expression. Kenneth suddenly became very interested in his dessert plate, while Janet made nervous conversation with the children. "Mother, that's incredibly rude," I said, my voice shaking with shock and anger. Marcus is a wonderful man and I love him. I thought you would be happy for us. Happy? Mother's voice rose slightly. Happy that my daughter is settling for mediocrity? Happy that she's making a decision that will limit her potential? Beverly, you're 32 years old. You should be thinking practically about your future, not getting swept away by romantic notions. Father cleared his throat uncomfortably but said nothing. Kenneth continued his intense study of his empty plate. Only Janet looked up with sympathetic eyes, but she remained silent, unwilling to challenge Mother's authority in her own home. Marcus finally spoke, his voice steady and respectful, despite the attack he had just endured. Mrs. Henderson, I understand your concerns about Beverly's future. I love your daughter very much, and I'm committed to building a good life with her. I hope that in time, you'll give me the chance to prove that I can make her happy. His grace under fire only seemed to irritate Mother more. It's not about making her happy in the moment, Marcus. It's about practical realities. Marriage is about partnership, about building security and stability. I've seen too many women make emotional decisions they regret later. The conversation deteriorated from there. Mother began listing her objections. Marcus's job wasn't prestigious enough. His salary wasn't high enough. His family background wasn't impressive enough. She questioned whether he was truly committed or just looking for someone to take care of him. Each criticism felt like a personal attack on my judgment, my worth, my ability to make my own decisions. I defended Marcus and our relationship, but Mother had an answer for everything, a reason why every positive thing I said was actually evidence of my naivete. The afternoon that was supposed to be a celebration became a battlefield. Marcus remained respectful throughout, never raising his voice or responding with anger, which somehow made Mother's attacks feel even more unfair and cruel. We left early, making polite excuses about having other commitments. Mother's parting words as we gathered our coats echoed in my ears. Don't expect our blessing for this mistake, Beverly. Don't expect us to pretend we're happy when we're watching you ruin your life. The drive home was mostly silent, both of us processing what had just happened. Finally, Marcus reached over and took my hand. I'm sorry that was so difficult, he said quietly. But it doesn't change anything between us. Your family's approval would be wonderful, but it's not required for our happiness. His kindness in the face of such treatment only made me love him more and hate what my family had done to us both. What followed was a calculated campaign designed to destroy my relationship and bring me back under Mother's control. The phone call started the next morning and continued daily, sometimes multiple times per day, each one designed to plant seeds of doubt about Marcus and my decision to marry him. Mother's concerns evolved and multiplied with each conversation. She had done research, she claimed, asking around about Marcus's company and discovering that layoffs were possible in his department. She had spoken to her friend who worked in tech, who warned that software engineers often struggled with job security as they got older. Had I considered what would happen if Marcus lost his job after we were married? The questions became increasingly invasive and hurtful. Was I sure Marcus wasn't just using me for financial stability? Had I noticed how he always let me pay for things when we went out? Why hadn't he bought me a bigger engagement ring if he truly loved me? These weren't expressions of genuine concern. They were weapons designed to undermine my confidence and happiness. Kenneth and Janet were recruited into the effort. They invited me to dinner alone, claiming they wanted to spend quality time with me, but the evening turned into an intervention. They had prepared a folder of information about Marcus, printouts of his social media posts taken out of context, his college transcripts somehow obtained, even a credit report that I never asked to see. We're worried about you, Kenneth said, sliding the folder across their dining room table. We think you're making this decision with your heart instead of your head, and we want to make sure you have all the information. The violation of Marcus's privacy was breathtaking. I refused to look through their research, pointing out that investigating my fiance like a criminal was completely inappropriate. Kenneth argued that they were just being thorough, that marriage was too important a decision to make based on emotions alone. Janet, to her credit, looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, but she supported her husband's position. We just want what's best for you, she said. Sometimes when we're in love, we don't see things clearly. Mother escalated her tactics when subtle manipulation failed to achieve the desired results. She began calling my workplace, claiming family emergencies that required me to leave important meetings. My boss became concerned about my personal problems affecting my professional performance. She also started showing up unannounced at my apartment, using the spare key I had given her years ago for legitimate emergencies. I would come home from work to find her sitting in my living room, ready to continue our ongoing argument about my engagement. She would go through my mail, rearrange my furniture, and leave notes about things that needed my attention. The emotional blackmail reached new heights when Mother scheduled a doctor's appointment and insisted I accompany her. She claimed that the stress of my engagement was affecting her health, that I was literally making her sick with worry and disappointment. "Look what you're doing to me," she said in the doctor's waiting room, gesturing to her tired appearance and weight loss. "This is what happens when children don't consider their parents' feelings. This is the price I'm paying for your selfishness." The doctor, clearly uncomfortable with being used as a prop in our family drama, assured Mother that her symptoms were consistent with normal stress and recommended relaxation techniques. But Mother had made her point. My happiness was causing her suffering, and it was my responsibility to fix it. Father's contribution to this campaign was his continued silence. When I called him privately, hoping he might provide some balance to Mother's extremism, he offered only weak platitudes about considering everyone's feelings and finding compromises. He never directly supported Mother's behavior, but he never challenged it either, leaving me to face her manipulation alone. The constant pressure began affecting my relationship with Marcus. I became anxious and defensive, second-guessing decisions we made together, worrying that Mother might be right about things I had never questioned before. Marcus noticed the change and gently encouraged me to set boundaries with my family, but I wasn't ready to hear that advice yet. I still believed that if I could just find the right words, the right approach, the right compromise, I could make Mother understand and accept my choice. I hadn't yet realized that her opposition wasn't based on legitimate concerns about Marcus, but on her need to control my life and keep me dependent on her approval. The final confrontation came at Kenneth's 35th birthday party, an event that Mother had spent weeks planning and that I had hoped might provide an opportunity for family healing. I was wrong about that, spectacularly and painfully wrong. Mother had invited her friend's son, Richard Matthews, without mentioning it to me beforehand. Richard was a recently divorced corporate lawyer with an impressive salary and what Mother considered appropriate social credentials. She introduced him to me as my friend and spent the entire evening orchestrating opportunities for us to interact while systematically excluding Marcus from conversations. When I tried to include Marcus in discussions, Mother would interrupt or redirect attention elsewhere. When Richard asked about my work, she answered for me, highlighting my accomplishments and potential in ways that made it clear she was marketing me as available. The manipulation was so obvious that other party guests began to notice and feel uncomfortable. The breaking point came when Mother pulled me aside for what she called a private conversation, but was actually an ultimatum delivered in the hallway outside Kenneth's living room. "This has gone on long enough, Beverly," she said, her voice low and intense. "You're embarrassing yourself and this family with this ridiculous engagement. Look at Richard. Look at what you could have instead of settling for someone who will hold you back your entire life." I tried to explain again that I loved Marcus and intended to marry him regardless of her approval. I pointed out that Richard was a stranger to me, that I wasn't interested in being set up with anyone, and that her behavior was inappropriate and hurtful. "You're not thinking clearly," she replied. "You're making an emotional decision that you'll regret for the rest of your life. I'm your mother, and I know what's best for you better than you do." That statement crystallized everything that was wrong with our relationship. At 32 years old, after building a successful career and maintaining healthy friendships and relationships, I was still being treated like a child, incapable of making my own decisions. "I'm an adult," I said firmly. "I'm capable of choosing my own husband, and I choose Marcus. I need you to respect that decision and stop interfering in my relationship." Mother's response was swift and final. "Then you need to choose. It's him or your family. You can't have both. If you marry that man, you're choosing to leave this family behind." The ultimatum hung in the air between us like a weapon. I stared at her, hoping she would take it back, soften it, reveal that she was just speaking from emotion and didn't mean such a terrible thing. But her expression remained hard and determined. "You're asking me to choose between the man I love and my family?" I asked, hardly believing what I was hearing. "I'm asking you to choose between a mistake and your future," she replied. "Between selfishness and responsibility. Between what you think you want and what's actually good for you." I realized in that moment that this conversation was happening in a hallway where other party guests could overhear every word. Mother had chosen this location deliberately, using public pressure and potential embarrassment as additional weapons in her arsenal. My response came from a place of hurt and anger I didn't know I possessed. If loving someone who treats me well and makes me happy is a mistake, then I'd rather make that mistake than live the kind of life you're demanding I live. What happened next shocked everyone in the house, including me. Mother began screaming, her voice carrying throughout Kenneth's home and bringing every conversation to a halt. She accused me of being ungrateful, selfish, and delusional. She called Marcus a gold digger, and me an idiot for not seeing it. "You're throwing away everything we've given you," she shouted. "Everything we've done for you, everything we've sacrificed, and for what? For some nobody who's using you." Kenneth appeared in the hallway, along with several other party guests who had been drawn by the commotion. Janet was holding their youngest child, who had started crying at the loud voices. Father stood at the edge of the group, looking stricken but still silent. Mother's final words were delivered at full volume, ensuring that everyone present would hear and remember them. "If you marry him, you're dead to us now. Dead. Don't come crying to us when this disaster falls apart, because we won't be here." The silence that followed was complete and horrible. 20 people stood frozen in Kenneth's hallway, witnesses to the complete destruction of my relationship with my mother. Marcus appeared at my side, having heard everything, his face pale but his presence steady and supportive. Kenneth, faced with choosing between his mother and his sister, in front of his friends and neighbors, made his choice clear. "Maybe you should both leave," he said quietly. "Let everyone calm down." Father said nothing. Janet looked like she wanted to cry. The party guests began finding excuses to collect their coats and leave early. Marcus and I gathered our things in silence and walked out of the house where I had spent my childhood, where I had celebrated birthdays and holidays and graduations, knowing that I might never be welcome there again. The 3 days that followed were the darkest of my adult life. I called in sick to work, something I had never done for emotional reasons, and spent hours crying on my couch while Marcus held me and tried to offer comfort that felt impossible to accept. The grief was overwhelming and confusing. I was mourning the loss of my family, while simultaneously feeling relief at no longer having to navigate Mother's constant manipulation and control. I felt guilty for that relief, ashamed of it, as if feeling better about the situation somehow proved that I was the selfish person Mother claimed I was. Marcus was incredibly patient during this time, never once suggesting that I might want to reconsider our engagement to repair things with my family. He brought me food I couldn't eat, made tea I didn't drink, and listened to me repeat the same questions and fears, without ever seeming frustrated or bored. "What if she's right about you?" I asked him on the second day, voicing the fear that had been eating at me. "What if I'm making a terrible mistake and I'm too blind to see it?" His answer was simple and honest. "Then we'll figure it out together." "But Beverly, the way your mother treated you, treated us both, that's not love. That's control. People who love you want you to be happy, even if they don't understand your choices." On the 4th day, I woke up with a strange sense of clarity. If Mother wanted to declare me dead to the family, I decided I would give her exactly what she had asked for. The idea came to me fully formed, and for the first time in days, I felt a spark of energy and purpose. I researched local florists online until I found one that specialized in funeral arrangements. Perfect Petals Sympathy Services had extensive experience with memorial flowers and custom ribbon messages. I called them and explained what I wanted: an elaborate funeral wreath suitable for a family member, with white lilies, roses, and baby's breath arranged in a traditional circular design. The florist, probably accustomed to unusual requests during times of grief, was professional and helpful. She suggested adding some greenery for contrast, and recommended a stand that would display the arrangement prominently. For the ribbon, I chose deep purple, with elegant gold lettering. The message took me several drafts to perfect. "In memory of Beverly, beloved daughter, gone but not forgotten." Below that, in smaller text, "May she rest in peace, finally free from disappointment." I included a sympathy card with the arrangement, written in my most formal handwriting. "Dear grieving family, since I am now dead to you, please accept this token of mourning for your loss. I hope this arrangement brings you comfort during this difficult time and helps you find peace with your decision. With sympathy for your bereavement, Beverly." The florist promised delivery the following afternoon, right around the time when Mother typically hosted her weekly book club meeting. The timing wasn't accidental. I wanted maximum impact and witnesses to ensure the message couldn't be ignored or reinterpreted. That same day, I took practical steps to make my symbolic death a reality. I changed all the locks on my apartment, something I should have done years ago. When Mother began using her emergency key for non-emergencies, I blocked her phone number, Kenneth's number, and Father's number from my cell phone. I updated my emergency contacts at work, removing all family members and listing Marcus and my best friend Sarah instead. I also called my bank and removed Mother's name from my accounts. Years ago, she'd convinced me to add her as a joint holder, just in case something happened. But I realize now that this access was just another form of control. The bank representative was efficient and professional, asking no questions about why I wanted to remove an authorized user. The process of erasing my family's access to my life was surprisingly liberating. Each step felt like removing a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. For the first time in my adult life, my personal business was truly personal, my decisions were truly my own, and my space was truly private. Marcus watched this transformation with amazement and relief. "You seem different," he said as I finished updating my contacts list. "Lighter, somehow." He was right. Despite the grief and sadness, I did feel lighter. The constant anxiety about Mother's approval, the exhausting effort of trying to manage her emotions and reactions, the fear of disappointing her, all of it was gone, replaced by a strange sense of freedom. That evening, Sarah called to check on me. She had heard about the birthday party confrontation through mutual friends and wanted to offer support. When I told her about the funeral wreath, she was quiet for a long moment. "Beverly," she finally said, "that's either the most brilliant thing you've ever done or the most insane. Maybe both." "Probably both," I agreed. "But Mother wanted me dead to the family, so now I'm dead. She should get exactly what she asked for." The funeral wreath was delivered at exactly 2:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, right in the middle of Mother's book club meeting. I know this because Sarah, who is still friends with some of the book club ladies, gave me a detailed account of what happened. According to Sarah's source, Mother answered the door expecting a late arrival to the meeting and instead found a delivery man holding an enormous funeral arrangement. The wreath was everything I had hoped for: elegant, expensive-looking, and unmistakably funereal. Mother's reaction was immediate and visible. She went completely white, stepped backward, and stared at the arrangement as if it were going to attack her. The delivery man, probably accustomed to emotional reactions to funeral flowers, simply asked her to sign for the delivery and place the wreath on its stand beside her front door. The book club ladies, curious about the interruption, gathered behind Mother to see what was happening. When they read the ribbon and sympathy card, the confusion was apparent. Who was Beverly? Why was there a funeral wreath for someone they'd never heard of? Had there been a death in the Henderson family? Mother, faced with a group of women expecting explanations, simply slammed the door and refused to discuss the matter. She left the wreath on her front porch, where it remained for the rest of the afternoon like a monument to our destroyed relationship. The book club meeting ended early, with several confused ladies making excuses to leave. Word of the mysterious funeral flowers spread quickly through Mother's social circle, creating exactly the kind of public attention and speculation that she had always been desperate to avoid. Kenneth called me that evening, somehow having gotten my new phone number from someone at work. His voice was tight with anger and embarrassment when he demanded to know what I thought I was accomplishing with such a cruel stunt. "You wanted me dead to the family," I replied calmly. "I'm just helping you process your grief over losing me." "This is sick, Beverly," he said. "This is vindictive and twisted, and it's hurting Mom terribly. She's been crying all afternoon." "Mother made a choice," I responded. "She chose to cut me out of the family rather than accept my engagement. I'm simply respecting her decision and helping her follow through with it completely." Kenneth argued that I was taking things too far, that family disagreements shouldn't end relationships, that I was being dramatic and unreasonable. He seemed genuinely unable to understand why I wouldn't just apologize and try to work things out. "Work what out exactly?" I asked. "She gave me an ultimatum. Choose Marcus or choose the family. I chose Marcus. She said I was dead to her. I'm simply acknowledging that death. What exactly should I be apologizing for?" Kenneth had no answer for that question. The conversation ended with him saying that the whole family was disappointed in my behavior, as if my response to being disowned was somehow worse than being disowned in the first place. Father called the next day, his voice sad and tired. Unlike Kenneth, he didn't express anger about the funeral wreath. Instead, he asked if there was any way to fix the situation, any compromise that might bring the family back together. "She's your mother, Beverly," he said. "She loves you, even if she has a hard time showing it. This whole thing has gotten out of hand, and maybe it's time for everyone to step back and think about what's really important." His plea was gentle and heartfelt, and for a moment I considered whether there might be a path back to some kind of relationship with my family. But then I remembered the years of manipulation, the constant criticism, the invasion of my privacy, and the public humiliation at Kenneth's party. Dad, I've been stepping back and thinking about what's really important for 32 years, I told him. What's important is being treated with respect by the people who claim to love me. What's important is having my decisions respected, even when they're not the decisions Mother would make. What's important is not having to earn love by giving up my autonomy. Father was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, I wish things could be different. They could be different, I replied. Mother could accept my engagement and welcome Marcus into the family. She could apologize for the things she said and the way she treated us. She could respect my right to make my own choices. But she won't do any of those things, will she? He admitted that she wouldn't. Mother was convinced she was right, convinced that I was making a terrible mistake, and convinced that everyone would eventually realize she had been trying to protect me. She saw the funeral wreath not as a consequence of her own actions, but as proof that I was unstable and vindictive. That conversation with Father made me realize that hoping for change was pointless. Mother's behavior wasn't going to improve, and the family's enabling of that behavior wasn't going to stop. The funeral wreath wasn't just a symbolic gesture. It was a recognition of reality. 2 days after the wreath delivery, I was at work leading a presentation for potential clients when my assistant knocked urgently on the conference room door. Her expression was apologetic but alarmed as she whispered that I had a family emergency in the lobby that required immediate attention. Through the conference room's glass walls, I could see down into the building's main lobby, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Mother was pacing back and forth near the security desk, clearly agitated and talking animatedly to anyone who would listen. She was wearing her best dress and had obviously prepared carefully for this public appearance. I excused myself from the presentation, asking my colleague James to continue in my absence, and took the elevator down to the lobby with a sense of dread. As the doors opened, I could hear Mother's voice carrying across the space, loud enough that people throughout the area were stopping to listen. My daughter is having a mental breakdown, she was saying to the security guard, a kind older man named Robert, who had always been friendly to me. She's been acting erratically, making poor decisions, and I'm here because the family is concerned about her well-being. Robert looked deeply uncomfortable with the situation, but was trying to be helpful. Ma'am, if you're concerned about someone's mental health, maybe you should contact their doctor or a counselor rather than coming to their workplace. She won't listen to reason. Mother continued, her voice getting louder. She's engaged to a man who's completely wrong for her. She's cutting off contact with her family. And yesterday, she sent us funeral flowers as some kind of sick joke. This isn't normal behavior. By this point, a small crowd had gathered. Employees from various companies in the building were pretending to check their phones or read notices on the bulletin board, while obviously listening to every word. My own colleagues from the marketing firm were starting to come down from our floor, drawn by reports of commotion in the lobby. When Mother saw me approaching, her voice rose even higher. Beverly, thank goodness. We need to talk about what's happening with you. This behavior has to stop. You're scaring your father and making Kenneth's children ask questions we don't know how to answer. The manipulation was breathtaking in its boldness. She was reframing the entire situation, making herself the concerned mother trying to help a troubled daughter, rather than the controlling parent who had issued ultimatums and disowned her child. Mother, you need to leave, I said as calmly as I could manage, very aware that dozens of people were watching this interaction. You told me I was dead to the family. I respected that decision. There's nothing to discuss. See? She said to Robert and the gathered crowd, as if my calm response proved her point. This is exactly what I'm talking about. She's not thinking clearly. No rational person sends funeral flowers to their own mother over a family disagreement. My boss, David Chen, appeared at my elbow, his expression concerned and confused. He had obviously been briefed on the situation, but was trying to understand what kind of family emergency required handling in our building's lobby during business hours. Beverly, is everything all right? He asked quietly. Do you need to take some time to handle this? Before I could answer, Mother addressed him directly. Are you her supervisor? You should know that Beverly is going through some personal difficulties right now. The family is very concerned about her mental state and decision-making ability. We're trying to get her some help. The accusation was clear and devastating. In front of my boss, my colleagues, and a lobby full of strangers, Mother was suggesting that I was mentally unstable and potentially unfit for my professional responsibilities. David's expression shifted as he processed what he was hearing. Mrs. Henderson, I think this conversation should happen somewhere private. Perhaps you and Beverly could step outside or use one of our conference rooms. She won't talk to us privately, Mother replied. She's blocked our phone numbers and changed her locks. She's completely cut off contact with her family because we had concerns about her engagement. This is the only way we could reach her. The lie was seamless and convincing. To anyone who didn't know the full story, Mother sounded like a desperate parent trying to reach a troubled child who had overreacted to well-meaning family concerns. I realized that anything I said in that moment would sound defensive and potentially unstable. If I tried to explain the real situation, the years of manipulation and control, the ultimatum and public humiliation, I would sound like I was making excuses or blaming others for my problems. Instead, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I smiled calmly and spoke directly to David while ignoring Mother completely. I apologize for this disruption, I said. This is a personal family matter that my mother has chosen to bring to my workplace inappropriately. I'm happy to discuss the situation with you privately if you have concerns about how it might affect my work. But right now, I need to ask security to escort my mother from the building. Mother's reaction was immediate and explosive. You can't just ignore me, Beverly. I'm your mother. You can't just throw away your family because we don't approve of one relationship. Her voice had risen to near shouting levels, and Robert was already moving toward her with the clear intention of ending this disruption. But Mother wasn't finished with her public performance. This is what I'm talking about, she called out, as Robert gently but firmly guided her toward the exit. Look how cold she is. Look how she's treating her own mother. This isn't normal behavior from a healthy person. The lobby fell silent as Mother was escorted outside, her voice still carrying through the glass doors, as she continued her protests on the sidewalk. I stood in the middle of that silence, surrounded by colleagues and strangers who had just witnessed my family drama played out like a soap opera. David cleared his throat and suggested we go upstairs to finish our conversation privately. The elevator ride was excruciating, and I could feel the eyes of every person we passed as we walked to his office. The aftermath of Mother's workplace ambush forced me to confront the full extent of the damage our relationship had caused and make some final, difficult decisions about my future. David was professional and understanding as I explained the real situation behind Mother's accusations. I gave him a brief but honest overview of the family dynamics, the engagement conflict, and Mother's escalating attempts to control my life. He listened without judgment and assured me that my job wasn't in jeopardy, but I could see the concern in his eyes about potential future disruptions. The incident had accomplished exactly what Mother intended. It damaged my professional reputation and created doubt about my stability and judgment. Colleagues who had witnessed the scene began treating me differently, with a mixture of sympathy and wariness that made normal work interactions uncomfortable. I realized that maintaining any connection with my family, even indirect contact through mutual friends, or attempts at limited communication, would only invite more manipulation and public scenes. Mother had demonstrated that she was willing to invade any space, violate any boundary, and cause any amount of embarrassment to maintain control over my life. That evening, I made the decision to go completely no contact with my entire family. I blocked Kenneth's new attempts to reach me through work email, returned Father's letters unopened, and asked Sarah to stop providing updates about family reactions to my decisions. The decision felt both devastating and liberating. I was choosing to become truly orphaned, giving up any hope of family reconciliation or support, but I was also choosing peace over chaos, respect over manipulation, and my own happiness over their approval. Marcus and I accelerated our wedding planning, deciding on a small ceremony with just close friends, rather than the larger celebration we had originally imagined. We found a beautiful venue, a historic garden pavilion that felt intimate and romantic, and set a date for early spring. Planning a wedding without family involvement was both simpler and sadder than I had expected. There were no arguments about guest lists or traditions, no pressure about vendors or venues, but there was also no shared excitement or support from the people who had raised me. I started therapy with Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a counselor who specialized in family trauma and narcissistic abuse. The sessions were painful, but incredibly helpful as I began to understand the dynamics that had shaped my entire life. Dr. Walsh helped me recognize that Mother's behavior wasn't just difficult or controlling, it was abusive. The constant criticism, manipulation, invasion of privacy, and threats were all forms of emotional abuse designed to maintain power and control over my life. Healthy parents want their children to become independent, successful adults, she explained. They support their children's decisions even when they don't agree with them. They respect boundaries and celebrate their children's happiness. What you've described is a parent who views their child as an extension or possession rather than a separate person. Through therapy, I learned about concepts like triangulation, the way Mother had recruited Kenneth and Janet to support her position against me. I learned about love bombing and punishment cycles, the way approval and disapproval had been used to control my behavior throughout my childhood and adulthood. Most importantly, I learned that healing from this kind of family damage was possible, but it required accepting that the parent I had always hoped for, loving, supportive, proud of my achievements and happiness, had never existed and never would exist. The therapy process was like grieving a death, which made the funeral wreath seem even more appropriate in retrospect. I was mourning the loss of the mother I had always wanted, the family relationships I had always hoped for, and the version of myself that had spent 32 years trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. 6 months after the workplace confrontation, Marcus and I were married in a ceremony that was everything I had dreamed of. Intimate, joyful, and focused entirely on our love and commitment to each other. My chosen family, close friends who had supported us throughout the family crisis, celebrated with us, and their genuine happiness made up for the absence of blood relatives. Sarah served as my maid of honor, and her husband walked me down the aisle in place of father. Marcus's family, who had welcomed me warmly from the beginning, treated me like the daughter they had never had. The contrast between their unconditional acceptance and my birth family's conditional love was stark and healing. 3 years later, I received news through mutual acquaintances that Mother had been telling people I was mentally ill and that the family was praying for my recovery. The narrative she had created painted her as the long-suffering mother of a troubled daughter who had inexplicably cut off all contact over minor family disagreements. The news saddened me but didn't surprise me. Mother's inability to accept responsibility for her actions or acknowledge the pain she had caused was completely consistent with everything I had learned about narcissistic behavior patterns. I felt compassion for her in an abstract way, recognizing that her need to control others probably stemmed from her own insecurities and fears. But that compassion didn't include any desire to resume contact or try to repair our relationship. Marcus and I built a beautiful life together, one based on mutual respect, open communication, and genuine support for each other's dreams and goals. We bought a house, adopted 2 rescue dogs, and created traditions and routines that brought us joy rather than stress. I advanced in my career, eventually becoming a marketing director at a different firm where no one knew about my family drama. I developed friendships with colleagues and neighbors that were based on shared interests and genuine affection rather than obligation or manipulation. The absence of family dysfunction created space for so much more happiness and peace than I had ever imagined possible. I stopped waiting for criticism or disapproval after sharing good news. I stopped second-guessing my decisions or seeking validation from people who would never provide it. I stopped accepting treatment that I would never tolerate from strangers, simply because it came from relatives. Most importantly, I learned that love, real love, doesn't come with ultimatums or conditions. It doesn't require you to sacrifice your autonomy or happiness to prove your loyalty. It doesn't punish you for making choices that others wouldn't make for themselves. The funeral wreath had been more than just a symbolic gesture or an act of rebellion. It had been a declaration of independence, a recognition of reality, and a commitment to my own well-being over the comfort of people who had never truly wanted me to be happy. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let toxic people experience the natural consequences of their choices. Mother chose control over connection, manipulation over love, and public drama over private healing. I chose peace over chaos, respect over abuse, and my own happiness over her approval. That funeral wreath wasn't just mourning the end of our relationship. It was celebrating the birth of my real life, the life where I got to decide what love looked like and who deserved access to my heart. Real love doesn't come with ultimatums, and that's a lesson I'll carry with me forever. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to choose between toxic family members and your own happiness? How did you handle family members who tried to control your major life decisions? Share your experiences in the comments below because your story might help someone else who's struggling with similar family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more about how people overcome family challenges and build healthier relationships. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that it's okay to prioritize your own well-being, even when family members disagree with your choices. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting this channel. Remember that you deserve relationships based on love and respect, not control and manipulation. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people who truly care about your happiness.